I had somebody recently approach me about selling a note, and I would like to ask what kind of information or documents that I can ask from them in order to just know that they're serious.
First, the assignment of mortgage. I think that's number one because there's a lot of people who will get these tapes that you see on the insider's trade desk and they'll forward it to their network, change the spreadsheet a little bit so it looks like their own thing. And then basically they're trying to wholesale it. They'll get a bid from someone else and they'll bring that bid to the seller and try to earn a spread. But if you ask for the assignments, it's like, okay, prove it. Are these your loans? That's what that asks them without saying it like that. Please share with me the assignments of mortgage so we can complete our due diligence. And by the way, you can do that yourself. You can check the assignments of mortgages in the public record. So if you have kind of a bad feeling like it's not a legit deal, you could pretty quickly just pull up a property address in the county record and see if there is an assignment. And then you can approach them with the information you have of who's the last assignee on title and say, you know, what is your relationship with company X, Y, and Z? Once that part is established and you know that you're talking to a decision maker or somebody who you can actually do business with, then to start just the spreadsheet, you know, you want to make sure you have property address, the unpaid principal balance, the borrower's name, the origination information. The main things that will be missing on a portfolio when you get the data tape are normally like the origination information or like the last payment dates and payment history information. So those are the things like when I first pull up a data tape, I want to skim through all the columns and make sure that I have everything I need. Because probably the worst case is you get a tape today and you don't open it until tomorrow. And when you open it up, you realize you're missing all this stuff. And then you send back the request to the seller and then they don't get back to you for another day. At this point, you're like halfway through the indicative bid process and you just haven't been able to get started. So if you're able to pull up a new opportunity as soon as you receive it for non-performing loans to make sure you have all the columns that you need to run your own pricing. And for performing loans, and this is kind of the hack with performing loans, if you can just run a formula to check that you'll earn the returns that you expect based on the monthly payment amounts for these loans and just send an indicative offer immediately, because that's pretty simple. If you want a 14% cash on cash return, you run a formula across the tape that takes the monthly payment amount minus like a $25 servicing fee, annualize that, divided by 0.14 for a 14% return, get the number that you would pay to get a 14% return based on that payment information, then double check that it's not more than the principal balance and send that back to the seller and say, you know, this isn't my final, but I wanted to get some indicative information. How do these numbers look? And then you could quickly just kind of sift through and see if you're even in the ballpark. So that's performing, but I think the same thing is with non-performing. As quickly as you can provide feedback to get some information so that you can complete the job, which, you know, means getting your pricing together. The better you look as a buyer, the more serious you look as like a great counterparty to work with, and the more higher chance of success you'll have buying those loans. Because otherwise there'll be questions you'll have later on and your bid's not going to be firm. It's not going to be, you know, taken seriously if you just are taking things for granted like that. So I think though a phone call often with a new seller is the best way to feel them out. And if you're not super confident yet having that conversation on the phone, then email is a nice way to like put all your thoughts on paper. And then maybe you don't send the email, but you have the conversation with the email you write as sort of your script.
When you're having a conversation with them, two questions that will tell you a lot are, where are the loans being serviced? And are you in possession of the collateral files physically? And if it's no, then where are they? Yes. So the answers to those two questions will tell you a lot.
You need the servicing transfer and you need the collateral shipped to you. So those two things, that's how you execute a trade. And if they don't know that, then you're out of luck.
Yeah, so if it's someone that is got a tape from somewhere else and they're forwarding it around, they're not going to know at that level of detail to be able to tell you. And so you can see right away. And if they tell you the loans aren't being serviced, then you may want to think about, do you want to even get into that? Because your transaction is going to be a lot more complex. But that's a good place to start from and go from there.
Once you get a little further along, asking them about when you actually close the deal, if they'll work with a third-party escrow is a good way to just feel them out, because in the past, there have been some loan sellers who will sell a tape multiple times and it's a fraud. I mean, they're just pocketing that money and taking fleecing all of this, the loan buyers that they work with. And if you have escrow, that means that all those collateral files need to be shipped out before funds are released. So it's not even possible to scam somebody if there's a third party, an independent third party involved. So as you get closer to funding a deal, just bring that up and see if they get a little scared about it, because then you can feel them out if maybe they're trying to pull a fast one. I think by that point in the transaction, you'll probably have somewhat of a working relationship. So you'll be a little bit able to know if there's some red flags, but that's like the easy one to just get them to say yes or no. And if they say no, you got to figure out why. And it might be the worst case scenario. And sometimes it's just people take a really, really long time to ship the files. And you're thinking like, am I getting scammed while you're waiting for the files to arrive? And Escrow can solve that as well. But that's more of a concern with like a brand new seller that you haven't worked with before. And very good idea to at least have that conversation early on.
And you can always come back to this group and ask about a seller that you don't know. Because between everyone in this room, we pretty much know 98% of the loan sellers that are in this industry.
And your reputation, it takes years and years and years to build it up, and one bad trade to bring it down, because everybody talks and then your name is out there. That's the worst case. That's why one of the main values of this group is our integrity, our reputations are paramount.